Holy smokes, Citibank is freaking out at the potential that RFK could end up joining Donald Trump and potentially even get a seat in the Trump cabinet. Now, I'm going to show the docs in just a moment, but I quickly want to give you like a quick summary here of some sentiments that are going on. I'm going to start with the more right-leaning sentiment, and then I'm going to give a little bit more of the left-leaning sentiment. So the right-leaning sentiment is that the Obamas are here to help Kamala Harris instill hope in the Democratic campaign, and the Democratic Party really has a history of doing this. You look at someone like Jimmy Carter, who promised more honest politics in 1976, or Bill Clinton, who was literally the man from Hope, Arkansas. That was one of his campaign pitches. He was born in Hope, Arkansas, and that was it. Anyway, Obama promised hope and change you can believe in, and then, of course, people are like, okay, we got it, now we got Trump, 8 years later. Then the frustration, this again, it's purposefully, I'm trying to give sort of the right perspective here, the right-leaning perspective. With Harris, people are very frustrated that she's basically just appointed, and she's in without a primary contest, and her speeches are scripted. It's the teleprompter. It's, hey, I used to not like fracking, but now I'm open to it. And I used to be for a single-payer healthcare system, but now I'm not. I'm different today. And yeah, I'm a prosecutor, so that means I can be tough on crime and tough on the border. And so they're really trying to take all of their weaknesses and kind of flip them around, but people are like, well, wait. Where are the details? It's cool to say that, but we got to see some of the details. Even the $25,000 down payment assistance policy, people are like, hey, for all first-time home buyers, is it like a tax credit? Is it straight up stimulus money? What are the resale requirements on the property? How long do you have to be a first-time home buyer for? I say that because some first-time home buyer programs let you use them if you just haven't bought a home and don't currently own a home within the last, 3 years or whatever. Anyway, so, and then, of course, people on the right are frustrated that there hasn't really been a real interview yet with Kamala Harris, other than sort of scripted events. And so people are a little frustrated by that. They suggest that Kamala Harris is experiencing a sugar high, and that, she's coming out of the gate with announcement and hope and cheer, but now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty and get into the details. Now, the left-leaning position is that, well, Trump is an erratic insurrectionist who's impulsive and self-interested, and what at bare minimum needs to happen is Democrats need to win a majority in the House, or just keep it in the Senate, so they can block any kind of one-party legislating like another Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which, frankly, it seems like a lot of people kind of really like the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but okay, whatever. And then you also have this sort of branding from the left that's, Trump is just trying to make his rich boys richer. And, they do have an interesting point that, yes, Trump is probably seen as more pro-crypto, more pro-investment community, more pro-wealthier individual, potentially, especially since right now about 1/4 of his fundraising comes from the securities and investment industry. Probably a lot of crypto folks in there. That's over 120-ish million bucks already. In 2016, they gave like 1/5 of that, less than $21 million. So kind of interesting. There's these sort of disparities here and the differences. And really, we're at the point in this early first kind of 35 days of the Harris campaign where Harris has started kind of pulling ahead in some of the predicted numbers and in some polls. Again, people are suggesting, first of all, don't believe the polls. They're all rigged and nonsense, which is true. Some polls have been found to oversample Democrats and you get a Harris lead. You could also honestly manipulate the betting markets if you have enough dollar hallas because you can kind of buy up the order book. But anyway, take a look what happened today, and then we're going to talk about what Citi said regarding RFK, because what you're about to see could be because of the RFK announcement. Look at this. This is a flip. Donald Trump back in the lead on Polymarket's betting odds with an $84.8 million bet and a 52% chance versus Kamala Harris at $77 million. This is after the news that RFK might on Friday announce that he's joining the Trump camp. This will be a big game changer. Note over here on Predict It, we still have Kamala in the lead at 53 to 50 Trump, but we've got this narrowing that you could see over the last 7 days here. If you go out to the 90-day chart, you could see Kamala Harris really had a nice wedge here over Donald Trump. Again, this is just the last kind of 30 days here, people calling it the sugar high, new candidate, trying to brand herself as not having baggage and new ideas, hope, change, whatever. But it's detail time, right? And now after this RFK talk, we're starting to see a narrowing of that spread. In fact, if you go down to the 24-hour market, you could see it's extremely tight, just 3 cents apart now, again, after that RFK talk. Now, some of that is likely due to the fact that RFK's sort of solo odds, if we check him on here, which they kind of drag along the bottom over here, so you don't really see much of a move over here. But you can see his 2 cents basically goes right back down. It's a little harder to pit that, his votes over here or the 3 cents here or whatever went over to Trump. But we expect that's what recently happened here. Now, why do we expect that? Well, let's take a look at this Citibank article because it seems like Citi is jumping up and down over this one. So you ready for this? Let's go on over. Now, I know some of you don't like this microphone. I'm working on the positioning and I'm working on the sound quality, okay? Last time some of y'all are like, Kevin, it's too muffled. You sound like crap. And I don't know. I think some people are like, Kevin, there's a mic in your face. I'm like, what's with all the dudes worried about the big cylindrical object, beaming into my mouth? I don't know. Anyway, so Nicole Shanahan, by the way, she's donated a crap load of money to the RFK campaign. I think she's personally into the RFK campaign for like $15 million. And you got to have a lot of money to be able to donate $15 million to a campaign. Because if you lose, then it's like, man, you don't want to be bankrupt. Anyway, so take a look at this. This is from Citibank, and they suggest that RFK Jr. has been polling around 5%. That is significant and could be enough to tilt all the swing states in the favor of Trump. Now, that's a really, really big claim here. I mean, this is like freak out level, huge claim. If you could get those independent voters, which obviously not all of the supporters were going to go for Trump that were RFK fans. After all, some people are RFK fans because they don't want Trump and then they don't want a Democrat. But they would have been okay with RFK as a Democrat if he were still there, but he would have gotten primaried, so that's why he's independent now. But anyway, this idea that RFK could potentially jump onto the Trump campaign and then move, maybe even call it 3% of that vote over. Well, if you move 3% of the vote over in the betting markets, what do you have? Well, let's look at it. That's Bill Ackman. I meant to go. Oh, that's the wrong button. Sorry. There. You've got, now all of a sudden you got Trump tied on Predict It, Trump way ahead on Polymarket, and if you go to the Real Clear Politics betting average, or sort of poll average, right now we could see that Kamala Harris has a lead over Trump of 1.5%. That would basically go to a 1.5 percentage point lead for Trump. And mind you, it's not really the popular vote that you need. You just need the swing states. So this is a game changer take from Citibank here that suggests joining forces with Trump, which Donald Trump did suggest, mind you, back, I think it was in June or July, suggested that, hey, maybe you could be part of our campaign or our administration in the future or whatever. Apparently, the markets are really excited about that potential because they're seeing, oh my gosh, RFK could be the solution to slam dunking the swing states, and boom, you get a Trump presidency, which then you have a lot of people who are saying, oh, smokes, if we get that, well, then what we're going to end up with is a market that might actually start rallying again. In fact, you had a stock market that had a little bit of heart palpitations when Kamala was first selected. It was almost like you were unpricing Trump. And now you've had a little bit of a rally back the last, 9-ish days, roughly. And people are suggesting, we're pricing back in some more Trump odds. But anyway, let's keep going with this Citi piece. And this microphone. Come on. I know some of you like it. Leave some support for the new microphone. It's German. It must be good then, right? All right. Anyway, so we noted that we could be approaching peak Harris, and an official decision from RFK to join Trump would further support this. Right. And now keep in mind, one of the reasons you might say something like peak Harris is because the initial euphoria of a candidate announcing is great, but then people start questioning the details of your policy plans. Like, what are you actually going to do about the border that's different? Because RFK, for example, some people, and I wrote these notes on the right over here, some people say, oh, that's that anti-vaxxer guy. But RFK actually has some pretty decent ideas and solid ideas. And when you listen to him, you're like, man, okay, yeah, maybe this guy isn't as crazy as sort of his reputation that precedes him implies he is. And those who support him really support him. They may follow his endorsement because, frankly, think about it this way. You might hate Trump, but if you say, all right, RFK is definitely out, but he has a chance to get in a seat of government through the Trump administration, well, now you have to ask yourself, would you rather have RFK in government or not? And if Trump is the conduit to get your guy in government, great. I personally think, and I didn't read this anywhere, I just want to be clear, this is my opinion. I personally think you should put RFK in something that's less public, not too much of like a speaking role. I'm just trying to be blunt. I don't think he's the best for a speaking role, but put him as like the head of the Department of Transportation or DHS or something, Department of Homeland Security, and put him in charge of infrastructure or border reforms. Both of those, by the way, he stands for. He stands for rebuilding infrastructure, rebuilding the middle class. He's actually one of the candidates who's a fan of diverting some, he's not trying to say like, oh, let's make America not safe, but diverting some of the excessive sort of, in the opinion of some, military spending for other efforts like Ukraine or Israel or whatever. Divert some of that and just take some of that money and start spending on infrastructure in the United States, which frankly is a frustration of a lot of people. People are like, why are we spending so much money on these other countries when we have our own problems at home? Now, obviously, the counter argument to that is, oh, well, it's for national security. A weak Russia is a strong United States. Blah, 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 whatever, right? This is, of course, then where you can kind of combine the argument and say, oh, well, if Trump were president, we wouldn't have had a new war, and then we wouldn't have had to spend the new money, and we could have spent the money on the infrastructure plan. Now, Donald Trump did have an infrastructure proposal back when he was president the first time. It didn't pass. It actually never came to the table because I think COVID hit. They focused on the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. By midterms, you already lost the sweep power that you had in Congress. You lost control of all three branches. And then, of course, COVID hit. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to acknowledge that, Trump did run on infrastructure, and we got smaller infrastructure plans, Keystone XL pipeline, Water Acts, billions of dollars for various different initiatives, but not that big sort of sweeping reform. I think this might be an opportunity for Trump to say, look, no wars were started on my watch. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen again, and the money we save we'll be able to put into infrastructure. And guess what? RFK is going to lead that division, or lead the infrastructure spending and make sure that we make America great again. Whatever, right? That's sort of an argument that you could take if you're thinking about this. And I actually agree with Citi here that really, if you combine forces with RFK, I think you almost have to guarantee the guy a cabinet role, because what you don't want is Trump coming across as like a user, because, people aren't going to put that past Trump. Let's just be real. Even if you like the guy, you're going to agree. Like if Trump can win with RFK and then not use him if he didn't need him in the administration, he'll just dump him. But if Trump makes the promise, he doesn't want to come across as a liar, although I know plenty of people already think he is or are convinced he is, whatever. But the point is, Trump should make that promise up front, because I think it would actually give him more of a guarantee that those RFK voters are going to turn out for Trump, if that's what Trump wants. I actually do think that this potentially hurts the Harris camp, because what you're doing is you're taking somebody who was a Democrat and you're basically showing the centristism of a, RFK, Trump, and Vance ticket, essentially. I shouldn't be saying ticket because a cabinet member is not on the ticket, but you know what I mean. Coalition, we'll call it, right? And you do have Harris moving closer to the center as well. She's trying to get away from the defund the police and some of the more woke politics, because everybody's trying to win this election on centrism. Now, of course, there is a risk that, RFK is just going to be branded as the anti-vax guy now in Trump's administration. Look, he's much further to the right, blah, 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 blah. of course they're going to say that, but I don't think you're trying to convince that audience anyway. Like, they're already going to not vote for Trump anyway. So right now, take a look at this. There are two options we're looking at. This is what Nicole mentioned. And one is staying in the race, forming that new party, but we run the risk of Kamala Harris and Walz becoming basically the nominee, or the president, rather, president-elect, because we draw votes from Trump, right? You're taking votes away from Trump by doing your own thing. Or we combine forces with Trump. Now, you've got Citigroup here who thinks they might be able to get 5% in national polls, which would set them up for federal funding in future elections. But that might not be worth it if RFK could guarantee something inside of that Trump campaign. And Citibank turns this into sort of an economic POV and argues that the dollar will actually rise on this, strong dollar under this Trump news. I kind of think it's more likely that the dollar will weaken, maybe not necessarily on the news, maybe it'll go up on that news, but I actually think it'll weaken in the longer term because rates are going to down. I think they're going to go down faster than other people project, and I think Trump actually prefers a weak dollar because he sees it as making the United States more competitive for other companies buying stuff from the U.S., rather than us buying stuff from, an artificially cheap, let's say China, because they're, purposefully weakening their Chinese yuan, whatever. So anyway, should RFK actually join Trump, we expect to see a tactical boost in the USD, right? So it could fade over time. So they see that as an election trade. But I will say it's very interesting here. They seem convinced that Donald Trump will basically win all the swing states if he partners with RFK. And honestly, it seems like it's getting a lot of attention, and the betting markets are already starting to try to price it in. So could happen here. And honestly, I was wondering, I'm like, why did Bitcoin spike, like a couple $1,000 today? I think it could be because of this. People are starting to analyze and say, oh, this actually might increase the odds of Trump, and then you get the Bitcoin trade that comes back a little bit. So as soon as you got Kamala, Bitcoin actually started selling down, which I covered on the day Biden dropped out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be bad for Bitcoin in the short term because you have to unprice Trump a little bit. Just to be clear about that, Biden didn't have a chance. So it was like a slam dunk that Trump was going to win. So when you put anyone else in the position, whether it was a Cohn or Kamala or whatever, or Newsom, you would have seen Bitcoin go down, my expectation. So anyway, one other thing to remember is that this week is Jackson Hole Week. Very, very important. I'll have another video prepping you for that. But we did make a coupon code at meetkevin.com called Jackson Hole. So if you want to see my positioning, we're making a new channel that'll show you all of my open positions, exactly, the name, the security, the expiration date, if it's a contract, whatever. So that way you could look in one place and just go, okay, what's Kevin's positioning right now? You'll be able to see that. So we're going to make that a little easier, along with some of the larger trades that I've got going on, separating those out away from sort of like YOLO option, like YOLO swing trades or whatever, and showing you, look, here's where we have fundamental hedge fund style trades. Like, I've got a couple multi-million-dollar bets going, each of them over $1 million, in different sectors that I think are going to do really well, soft landing or recession. Those are big hedge-style trades that I really believe in, and we'll separate those from sort of long-term investments and then like a YOLO, like, oh, I think it's, we're going to bet this on earnings or whatever. So that way there's a lot of ease and transparency. A lot of folks have been really excited about that, so you could join that and see that as well. Just go to meetkevin.com before the Jackson Hole Symposium, which it was less than 40 hours away now, so check it out over at meetkevin.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye and good luck.
These things that you told us here, I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take. Even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is not personalized advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective, information, and commentary. Any third-party content I show shall not be deemed endorsed by me. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are either paid affiliations or products or services we may benefit from. I also personally operate an actively managed ETF. I may personally hold or otherwise hold long or short positions in various securities, potentially including those mentioned in this video. However, I have no relationship to any issuer other than HouseHack, nor am I presently acting as a market maker. Make sure if you're considering investing in HouseHack to always read the PPM at househack.com.